This is the PC I turned into a Steam Deck for my TV. I wanted to build my own, but part prices are insane. And then I found this one on Facebook and the deal looked too good to be true. I messaged the guy anyway and it turned out to be real. I got the new operating system up and running, but every game I tried would crash. So I brought it to the Facebook guy's house to see if we could fix it. This is the craziest Steam Deck video I've ever made. Ever since the Steam Deck came out and quickly became my most used gaming device, I have wanted SteamOS on a desktop PC to be my living room PC. And I've been tracking prices and they just haven't come down. But I got really lucky one night and saw a Facebook Marketplace listing for a great PC. And when I looked at the price, I was like, this definitely has to be a scam. The guy was only asking for $800, which is pretty cheap. But once I looked at the listing, I started to trust it. And the easiest way to show you why is to show you why. So let's head over to my desk. So the first thing is there's a ton of pictures and videos of the same device over and over again. That is immediately a good sign because that takes a lot of work, right? Like that's more effort than scammers usually put in. And then the other thing I noticed is that, you know, the description is really well filled out. It's filled out like a store listing. That takes effort. I also noticed that he put the PC parts picker link at the bottom of this listing, and that shows attention to detail. And the PC parts picker link adds up to like $1,200. He's selling it for $800. That is a little bit more of a discount than I would usually trust. But if you read the listing, he says this is a charity build. So he does these builds. He donates the money to charity that he makes off of it. I messaged him. I asked about it. He was adamant that this is a real story. He said he's done it 75 times. And if you look at his past sold items, he's got another PC for sale right now with a 512 gig SSD. It's got a 570, which is a pretty old card. So like, yeah, I think 450 is fair for that. I also noticed that it's in the same location, which, you know, tells me that this guy is doing it out of the same place. So these listings are probably legit. And if we check sold listings, he's got PCs coming through all the time, a mix of NVIDIA, a mix of AMD. He's got an ROG Ally I saw for $350, which is a fair price. He had SteamOS and Windows 11 on it. So like this guy's either a PC reseller or he's doing the charity builds. Regardless, he clearly knows about PCs. He sells a lot of PCs. That's why I believe this is at the very least a legitimate computer that I'm buying and not an absolute scam. So I jumped in the car, started driving out there, and I missed a potential red flag because while I was driving there, he messaged me that he wasn't feeling great, so he was sending his son. Now, if I saw that and I had just left my house, I probably would not have done the deal, just because when they send other people than who is the person making the listing, it just feels a little sketchy. But I'm actually glad in hindsight that I didn't read that message though, because his son was super nice and computer's exactly as advertised. I'm gonna get it home, I'm gonna install Bazite, and I'm gonna make my Steam console. When I got home, I wanted to make sure everything worked, so I booted up the computer, and this was clearly a guy who knew about computers. The Windows install was set up perfectly without a user. He had Furmark installed on there. He had Steam installed on there. The desktop was clean and all the parts checked out. I grabbed my recovery drive. I installed Bazite, which was a bit of a process because for some reason my mouse wouldn't work. And at first everything seemed great, but I got home from picking this PC up at 3 o'clock. It is now 7:30 p.m. I got Bazite installed, which was a little bit of a tough time. It was not as easy as the ROG Ally. I couldn't use a mouse, so my mouse would only show the cursor in the top left corner. I got everything going. I connected my DualSense Edge, and no matter what, when I play a game, it'll run for like 2 or 3 minutes and then hard crash Bazite. I'll get a forced restart. I called Gus, the guy I bought the computer from. This is not on him. He is a computer whiz. He's like an AI master. We went through resetting the RAM in the BIOS. We looked at game scope to see if anything was maxing out or overheating. Temperatures look absolutely fine. This thing is running cool as a cucumber. I'm gonna mess with this a little bit longer. My worst case scenario is we replace the GPU. It's still under warranty because everything was brand new. Gus has all the receipts and everything. I love a challenge, so we'll see. I'm glad this isn't my main PC because this would really suck. I contacted Gus and he was like, I have a full test bench. I have extra parts. Bring the computer over and we will get it fixed. So I'm driving out to this guy's house, which is not where I met him to pick it up. He seems super trustworthy. I was talking to him till 2 a.m. trying to figure all this out. It might be an issue with the 5700 XT. There's been a lot of crashing issues on Windows, Bazite, Arch Linux, everything across the board. So it looks like that might be the problem, but yeah, we will see what happens. 2 things to note right off the bat. First, Gus could not have been a nicer guy. And second, this guy is a computer master. He builds PCs as a hobby. He showed me the 15 workstations he has has for Dawn of War LAN parties he does with his friends. And most importantly, he was ready to fix this PC, so I'm gonna let him explain what he thought was wrong.
So I think the problem is either the video card, the GPU, or the power supply. Those are the only two parts that we know could cause this. So what we're gonna do is take this GPU out and stick another one. We'll put a nitro, and then if we continue to have the problems, then I'm assuming it's the power supply can't handle it. Like we're because it's a pretty weak power supply.
All right, I'm installing Bazite on the machine with the new GPU, which is the same kind of GPU, just a different GPU, and it's going so much better. I was able to use the mouse when I was installing it, so I didn't have to use the keyboard and mess around with that. Everything is moving so much faster, so it might have just been the GPU. We're moving in the right direction with this. I'm feeling very hopeful that I will have a Bazite machine by the end of this video. I'm getting more hopeful as it goes along. I tested Elden Ring on Bazite after running all the updates, and it works. Everything works now. So it turns out it may have just been the GPU. It's running great. The final test we're running here is to see how much wattage it's drawing, because it does have a 550 watt PSU, which is more than enough, but we are just trying to like rule out every problem potentially to make sure it doesn't happen again. So I've got Gus over here playing Elden Ring, got the voltage reader here. It's only pulling 234. I saw it shoot up to 247. So we're at about half of what's supported. And now we're up to 302, 304. Looks like it was the GPU, unfortunately, but we got this all figured out, which is great. I can't see, but it doesn't sound like it's crashed. So I think we're straight. With the GPU problem figured out, I packed up the PC and headed home to play some games. This PC is a console replacement, which means I'm going to use it on my couch. Now in game mode, I'm going to use the DualSense Edge. It has Bluetooth built in, so it's going to work great, but when I'm in desktop mode, I figured I should use a mouse and keyboard combo, so I picked up a Logitech one for 30 bucks at Micro Center, and it worked awesome. If you've watched the channel at all, you know I'm a massive racing game fan, so I immediately downloaded Forza Horizon 5. I also downloaded Need for Speed Heat. Of course, I already had Elden Ring installed and Zombieville USA 3D. I set Forza Horizon 5 to its high preset and locked it to 60 frames per second in the quick access menu, because everything works just like it does on the Steam Deck, and it is a perfectly locked 60 frames per second, even with ray tracing on this 5-year-old card. I guess that makes sense because the 5700 XT is very similar to what's in the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, but you know, you get a little bit of performance discrepancy depending on what device you're on, so I wasn't expecting it to run so beautifully right out of the box at 1440p. Need for Speed Heat, I also set to high 1440p, locked it at 60, and it runs about the same as it does on my 4090 PC in that it runs at 60 FPS most of the time, but when the Frostbite engine gets ahead of itself, you always see a stutter when it catches up, so it runs as well as it does on PS5 or my other PC, which is awesome. Zombieville USA 3D is a really light game. It also runs incredibly well. I have not played it on a TV, but seeing it blown up on a big screen made it look just a little bit nicer than it does on my Steam Deck, so I had a great time with that as well. So all in all, this experience was simultaneously a lot crazier, but a lot more fun than I was expecting. I am not the kind of person who gets frustrated when things go wrong. I actually like having a problem to solve because it gives me something to do and set my mind on, and having someone like Gus to do it all with was so much better than it could have been if I had to figure out everything myself. Something about the way he was talking just made me trust him, and I'm glad I did, because I was over there for about 3 hours and I think we spent about a total of 45 minutes actually working on the PC. We were talking about games, we were talking about hardware. I even convinced him to do his own Bazite build with some of the parts he had laying around, and I think it went pretty well. I know a lot of the people who use Bazite are total Bazite evangelists. They think it's so much better than SteamOS, even though they are very similar. I know SteamOS is just a little bit behind, but there's just something about it being the official OS of the Steam Deck, and I want to have that continuity between all the devices that I'm using Linux on. So while Bazite is amazing, it really just gets me excited for the full release of SteamOS, because it's going to work pretty much exactly the same way. When you download Bazite, you can pick which version. There's GNOME or KDE. KDE is pretty much exactly like the Steam Deck. It uses the Plasma desktop and it looks incredible. And up until now, the desktop was a little bit different on SteamOS than it is in Bazite, but with 3.7.5, they've updated SteamOS's user interface to basically match how it looks in Bazite. And the best part is this entire setup works flawlessly. It boots right into SteamOS. I can wake it up with my controller. Game mode works so much quicker and snappier and smoother than it does on a handheld like the Steam Deck, and everything in the quick access menu works exactly how you'd expect. I know there's a Decky plugin to actually mess with the GPU megahertz and everything like that, but I'm just leaving it stock because I've had no issues. This is getting really interesting because Microsoft is working on a version of Windows that works similarly to SteamOS, but I think it's going to work more like Steam already does on Windows, where you can boot up big picture mode and it's like an overlay for your desktop that works like SteamOS, but the cracks start to show very quickly. And just knowing how poor the performance is on the Xbox app on PC, I think it's going to be a little bit of a headache when it launches, because clearly they're throwing it together pretty fast. I think if Microsoft really wants to compete with Valve, they need to have something like SteamOS or Baze, where there's a full desktop environment and a separate game mode that you can boot into that effectively works like the Xbox OS. The biggest issue I ran into outside of the GPU not working at first, of course, is that Unreal Engine 5 is just a no-go on this GPU. You could lock it to 30 FPS, but you have to use a mix of medium and low settings. Those settings translate well to a small handheld screen, but blowing them up on my 70-inch TV, it just doesn't look all that good. So maybe later in the year, I'll upgrade the power supply and the GPU, because from my light research, it seems like this CPU is more than enough to handle something like the 9070 XT or maybe a 7900 XT. But that's the best benefit of having a PC that is built by someone else or yourself. You can upgrade the parts as you go along, which you definitely can't do in a console. If you want upgraded performance out of the PS5, you're paying $700 for a PS5 Pro. Of course, you get ease of use stuff, but man, SteamOS is on par with a console experience, and it really does make me excited for the future of PC gaming. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. It was a total journey from start to finish for me, but it was a ton of fun. I spent basically all of Thursday and Friday meeting new people, working on PCs, and just having a great time doing work that didn't feel like work. I think the logical next step for this PC, outside of just enjoying games on it, of course, is that once SteamOS releases, I'd like to replace the Baze install with that. So if you enjoyed this video and you want to see the sequel, let me know down in the comments below, share it with a friend, and of course, if you're new here, remember to subscribe if you haven't already. Oh, and of course, a massive shout out to Gus for not only helping me fix the PC, but also selling it at a great price and letting me film in his house and being great on-camera talent. I think I have a new friend here. So let me know if you want to see more Gus as well down in the comments below. Anyway, guys, as always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching, and shape on.